the Elmwood Cemetery, where Charlotte Berry-Sherrard is laid to rest, this is her father's obelisk. Her father was Joseph H. Berry, and I think he invented a varnish or some type of paint in early Detroit, late 1800s, and became very wealthy. He was actually one of the founding people of the Grosse Points, with one of the very first estates there. And we're going to go see the remaining part of that too. But as you see right here, we have Joseph Berry, and you can see the years he lived. And Charlotte was named after her mother, and Charlotte's mother died very young. Charlotte had two sisters, and this area contains the family's plot, basically. Now, Charlotte's story gets really interesting, and it even includes Jack Kerouac, if you can believe that one. True. Over here is where Charlotte's laid to rest. I've been here many times. Something about Elmwood. It's peaceful. It's serene. It's just a special place. Some people think cemeteries are creepy. I don't know. I guess I'm all right with death. I don't think so. And this one in particular is just amazing. The sculptural elements here. And Joseph's, while large and great, there are some that are just magnificent. But Charlotte actually lost her father and her husband relatively young. So behind me is Charlotte's grave and her husband's grave. Her husband was a linguistics master. He was actually one of the founders of the Detroit Liggett School, and his name was Berry-Sherrard. And I'm going to show you a picture of them in just a second, because I actually found one, which is pretty exciting. Her husband and father died very close together, not too far apart. I think I connected with that story because I've lost some people, a lot of people, sometimes close together like that. So I imagine that was a pretty difficult time for her. And at a time when women weren't allowed to have a bank account by themselves, their first names weren't really printed in the paper, they were not allowed to own property, they weren't allowed to buy birth control, they weren't allowed to do a lot. They weren't even allowed the right to vote yet. And she actually inherited property because her father and husband died so close together. Her father had passed without a will, which complicated things a little bit, and she had to deal with that going to court. Because of that, she inherited what's now known as Ashland Street and all of that land, which I'll do a video of that around my house sometime soon. When she inherited that land, it actually originally did not have any houses on it. There were race tracks, horse racing tracks in Jefferson, Chalmers. Very important part of the history that a lot of people don't know. Different tracks at different times. I think there were 3 in total. Henry Ford won his first race at one. And this huge tract of land was actually, Ashland was probably the far left side of the racetrack. And then a couple streets over would be the center, the entryway, and I think it held like 8,000 people. I mean, these racetracks are a big deal. Detroit was massive in horse racing, and most people don't know that, and had like the first super winning African-American jockey. Lost history. It's very interesting. But back to Charlotte. Charlotte got this land and went to the city of Detroit and said, I want to develop this land and I want you to put in some lateral sewer lines. And they told her, get lost, lady. They probably thought she was crazy. And I think her son was like a real estate attorney or something at the time. So she had her son with her. And then I found in the records that she went back. She went back about 1913 and basically made a deal with what at the time was the Detroit City Council, which it wasn't called that at the time, but that's its equivalent today. And she went to them and basically said, I will quit claim deed you a tract of this land in order for you to make an alleyway, which the alleyways in Detroit are actually supposed to be streets. They're not so much like that anymore, but they were originally designed to be a street entrance to the garage that would be in the back of a property, let's say, almost like a secondary street. So she said, if you will put in some lateral sewer lines so I can develop this land and build some houses, I will bequeath you the land for the alleyways to put basically the sewer system back there. And finally, after a couple of years, they agreed. Now here's the thing. I'm going to get to her suffrage history. She's in books. She's written about in college papers. She's known. She was actually the #1 funder for the Michigan suffrage movement. She was the head of media for the suffrage movement. And later on, after women got the right to vote in Michigan, she went on to be the president of the International Suffragette Society, which went on to help women around the world get the right to vote. Not a small feat. But all of these histories of her basically end with, and her husband died. She was forlorn, which I'm sure she was for a while. She was about my age, early 50s when this happened. But none of them have the history of what she did after that. She went on to develop basically a city. My house is one of the oldest in Jefferson, Chalmers. It was built in 1916. Actually, the building permit was 1916. It was finished being built in 1917. And that is a massive feat. And I have not found that information anywhere, except for when I started doing deep dive research into her. And then, back in the day, and maybe still, they published the meeting minutes from the city council at the time. And if you do enough digging in the newspapers back in the day, you can find a lot of stuff like that. So the next video, what I'll do is show you some of the suffrage stuff that she did, show you a picture of Charlotte and her husband. Actually, I have a picture of him too. And we're going to actually go see her, not only where her childhood home was, but her father built her a house as a wedding present. And that is in Grosse Pointe Farms, I think, on Lakeshore Drive. So we're actually going to go see that. And now there's a helicopter. So I guess it's time to go anyway. This is Charlotte Berry-Sherrard and her husband, Henry Sherrard. I believe they were at her father's property on Lakeshore Drive. Much of it's now gone. But check them out. I don't know what year this photo is from, but that, I would say, is one of the very first automobiles, really. Very first. They were very wealthy, so they would have been able to afford that. They also lived in the area, so they may very well have been at Henry Ford's first race when he was driving a Cadillac, actually. I have another picture of her. I'll try to find where it's a little more clear, but that's her.